Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this live stream. My name is Holly Matthews, and as you can see on the screen, I am the founder of the Happy Me Project. I'm also a self-development coach. What do? I do self-study courses. I have a podcast. I have social media stuff. I have a Facebook group, the Happy Me Project Facebook group, which some of you might be in. I do one-on-one coaching, and this month, I am going to be launching the membership, the Happy Me Project, the membership. I'm so excited. This is an online membership. I'm going to be telling you all about it over the coming week. And it is for those of you who want to work on your self-development. You want a regular check-in. You want community. Perhaps you can't afford to work with me one-on-one or work with a coach one-on-one. You want something a little bit more affordable, something that you can just work with in your own time. You will get access to all of my self-study courses when you get that. That's like £150 worth of courses. They will be regularly updated with courses and material, hypnosis audios, pep talk audios. There will be monthly coaching calls with me and the rest of the group via Zoom. Of course, you don't have to be on the Zoom. You don't have to, be live. It will be recorded. And I'm also going to aim to give people the option to potentially do some one-on-one coaching with me in those group sessions as well. There's loads more to come, and I will be explaining it all to you, but it will be available to you. We will be opening the virtual doors at the end of this month, and I'm so excited. Good morning to everybody on Facebook. I can see Laura. I can't see the first person that said good morning, but good morning. I see Laura Jane. I can see Danny. I can see Jane. Good morning, Jane. Jane, I've got your email as well. I've just saw that come through. Jane and I are going to be working together a little bit more closely, and I'm excited. So before we go any further, wherever you are coming in from, whether it's YouTube, whether it's Twitter, whether it is the Facebook group or on Facebook as well. Good morning, Hannah. And Hannah says, woo, looking forward to this. Me too. Wherever you're coming in from, let me know in the comments how you're feeling today. 1 being rubbish, 10 being incredible. Some of you, your children will have gone back to school today, which might be a moment of sadness or might be a moment of joy, depending on how well the holidays have gone. I don't know. And my kids are still here. We have a teacher training day, guys. Sick. Been stitched up. We had COVID on the way out, and then it's been a long 6 weeks. All right. Danny says, about 6, missing the kids already. Oh, Danny, it's tough, right? And somebody else is feeling a bit crappy today. And somebody on YouTube says, hi, it's Colleen in Australia. Welcome, Colleen in Australia. I have no idea what time it is in Australia, Colleen, but it feels like it might be late or I don't know. But welcome. I'm glad that you're here. So wherever you are on that scale today, 1 being rubbish, 10 being amazing, 6, a little bit, ropey, I guess, for Danny. I think Danny's usually a little bit higher. Wherever you sit on that, acknowledge it. And Danny's just saying her older starts secondary, just feeling sorry for you. You're allowed to feel sorry for yourself. You're allowed to feel that stuff. That's a big deal. My nephew has just started secondary school, and it's blown my mind a little bit that he is so grown. That's next year for me. So acknowledge these feelings that are coming up for you. Now, today's topic, it's 7:10 p.m. It's not horrendous. I'm going to shut my phone off because it's pinging at me. You get that in the morning. Nicole says, I've been waiting for them to go back, but now the day has come. I feel a bit tearful. Yeah, mine are in year 4 and year 8. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? How when we're in the moments of things, we don't always appreciate them and they're gone, and then we kind of want them back. And Hannah's yesterday was so sad. However, today I pulled on my big girl pants and having a fun week with my daughter, knocking some things off the bucket list. So 8 and heading up. Fantastic. And I'm glad that Martin is here. Martin says, I'm right down at the bottom, 1 or 2, but aware that it will get better. And Laura Jane says, I'm hovering at a 3. Okay, so Martin was one of the people that sparked this conversation today, although I've had many messages from lots of you after the really tragic death of Sarah Harding. And this is why I wanted to talk about grief. Although I do periodically talk about grief because of my own grief, and most of you know what that is. If you don't, my husband Ross died of brain cancer in 2017. And as you can imagine, it's a massive loss. And I can see, I'm just reading the comments on Facebook as well. I need this live today. I've recently lost an uncle to pancreatitis, is that how you pronounce it? A grandparent to COVID, a grandparent and a close friend both to cancer. all within 18 months. And welcome Twiggy as well. And Sammy says, morning, feeling a 4, starting to feel better and plan to do some crafting. So that should get my numbers higher. Amazing. Crafting's a great way out of the lull. And thank you, Colleen, as well, for commenting on my accent. Thank you so much. So as I do periodically talk about grief, but mostly in my own version of it. And I will probably, I certainly always weave that in. But yesterday, for many people, Sarah Harding's death was a huge trigger, and I didn't hear about it until later on. And her being so young was definitely a bit triggering for me. Her being so young, my husband was 32 when he died. It feels the wrong time. There's no right time. And when your old grandparents die, it's just the same. It doesn't, that's not in any way to minimize things in age. But I think when you can see similarities, it can hit home, whether you've known somebody go through cancer or it's the same cancer. My mom currently has breast cancer, which is all very scary and all gets muddled into one thing. And so we can find ourselves being really triggered by this. I kind of almost am hesitant to use the word triggered, because I think triggered's become a word that almost feels like, I don't know, it kind of feels minimized. The word itself feels like it's lost its potency, because it's been said a lot, hasn't it, in the wrong way over the last few years. And I can see people saying lost a friend of 28 years from cervical cancer. Yeah. And that's what I was going to ask, actually, first and foremost. Good morning, Lorraine. Good morning, Dad. Good morning, Sarah, as well. Sarah says, my son's granddad had gone into hospital, and it's 6 months since his dad passed away suddenly from cancer. He's gone back to the pattern of staying up all night. It's almost like his trick. Yeah, and this is it. So I want to ask first and foremost, how many of you have experienced grief in this group? How many of you that are in my gang, how many of you have experienced grief in some form? And specifically in this one, we're going to talk about grief in the death of somebody rather than the other grief, because there is lots of grief. There is the grief of relationships. There is the grief of job losses. There is the grief of all that time we lost during 2020 and the things we were going to do and weddings and all of that kind of grief. But in this live, I want to talk specifically about the loss of a person, the death of a person. I tend to use quite straight words, because what I've found in my own experience is that, and yeah, see lots of hands being raised. Yeah. What I found is when we use words like the passing away of, and, I don't know, what else do people say? I don't even know what people say, but, when we soften the words around death, sometimes that, certainly for somebody who's going through grief, minimizes it. I know that's not everybody's experience, but certainly from a person that is grieving, for me, I felt that saying the word my husband had died and death and those words helped it to make sense in my head. Because when somebody dies, and I'll use Sarah Harding as an example, when somebody dies, there's almost this sense of the lack of reality of that, unless it's literally in your face, unless it's somebody that you live with and are around all of the time, in which case it's slightly harder to not live it. But even still, even with that, our brains can't compute that a person that was living, breathing, that we experienced life with, that we loved, is no longer breathing and around, and their energy is no longer in our obvious space. That's really hard, isn't it? That's really hard to get our heads around. And so language can be very helpful for that. I'm sorry that I'm missing all of the comments. I will go back over them, but otherwise I won't be able to get everything said. But I can see that you guys are offering each other support. There is a lot of stuff going on. Martin's just said actually a very good point in terms of language. Sorry for your loss feels very trivial, but I understand it's what people say when they don't know what to say. And on my thoughts actually today, and I'll jump ahead of it because of that comment. Thank you, Rita. When people say things like, sorry for your loss, or any of those things, first and foremost, and I heard this recently on a podcast, you don't know until you know. Until you've experienced really big loss, until you've experienced the painful stuff, which, guys, we all will. It's share, but we all will. Every single one of us. Some get it early doors, but we will all experience it, whether it's when we're 17 or when we're 80, we will experience it and it will be painful. And so talking about this is really important. And when people want to offer their stuff. They want to offer their sorries and all of that. And it, when you've experienced it, you then go, oh God, what a stupid thing to say. But when you haven't, you say those things. And we say it because we don't know what else to say, because we don't talk about this stuff enough. We don't talk about it. We don't talk about the impact of words. We don't know how to articulate. And it doesn't mean, like, I still don't know, even having lived in, I still don't always know the best things to say, but I often find that just being really blunt and saying, it's so shit that you have to go through this. I'm so sad for you that you have to go through this. And I'm genuinely here if you want to talk. I'm genuinely here if you want to go and, do anything, whatever. It doesn't have to be talking about the stuff, because often that's not very helpful when you're in the midst of that early grief. But so when it comes to language, when it comes to that stuff, that the condolences that people offer, know that it's meant with love, and you don't have to allow it into your journey if you don't want to. You will find that when you go through grief, people will do and say some very strange things potentially in your model of the world. So for me, I don't believe in God. I don't believe in an afterlife, and neither did my husband. Now, that's not to say that I'm right, guys. If you believe in a heaven or an afterlife, or you believe in many lives, it's absolutely fine. And that doesn't jar my vision of the world, because we don't have the answers. We don't know what happens next. And absolutely anything that helps you to get through the stuff that you're going through, whatever works, do that. Whatever feels good in your model of the world, do that. But for me, as I don't believe in a God or an afterlife, and neither did my husband, and we were both quite vocal in that with each other and how we saw things. In fact, Ross said, if there is a heaven and there is a God, I'm going to be livid when I get up there, and I'm going to cause a right fuss, because I'm going to be fuming, because he's got some answers, or she or whoever's up there, they've got answers. They've got some stuff to answer for, right? So we didn't. So for me, in my model of the world, when Ross died and people would say, he's watching over you, I would think, bit weird, hope not. That didn't give me comfort, but that person didn't mean it in a way that was to cause me discomfort. They meant it in a loving way, because in their model of the world, that was true. And that's okay. People have said to my girls, Dad will be looking down on you in heaven. And that at this point doesn't sit with their model either, although they've been told they can believe in heaven, they can believe in whatever they want. I don't have the answers. We don't know. I'm not dead. How can I know? But for them, sometimes they roll their eyes, because that's a bit weird, because this is it. And so whatever you say, and this isn't to put judgment on anybody's way of speaking to those that are grieving, it's just an acknowledgement that we don't know till we know. And because our models of the world are so different, we will all be comfortable with different things. For somebody who believes in God and somebody who that is their model of the world, they will, seek comfort in somebody saying, your person is in heaven watching over you. So everybody is totally different, and that is okay. And that comes down to also how we grieve. When we see grieving in a movie, we see cliched grief, in my opinion. We see tears. We assume that when someone's grieving, they cry. And I can tell you categorically that is not always true. We can feel really angry at the person for dying. How dare they die? How dare they die of cancer? How rude. Grief isn't logical in that way. It's painful and it's messy. We think that we're going to see people, looking a mess and wearing a veil and all of those things, and it doesn't always look like that. It's cliched. I'm not saying it doesn't sometimes look like that. I'm not saying that for some people it doesn't look like that, but it's not the only way that people grieve. People grieve by taking up sport. People grieve by deciding they want to do a salsa class. People grieve by moving to another country. People grieve by getting up, getting ready, putting their damn makeup on and getting on with life. People laugh, people love, people move on. That doesn't mean that their grief doesn't sit next to that. I certainly know that before my husband died, I probably would have looked at people's circumstances of grieving and how they'd move forward and thought, God, that's so strange. Like, how have they fallen in love again? How have they continued to work? How do they look so good? And I didn't understand. And now I've lived it, and now I live it. I understand that those things can sit side by side. That pain of that grief and laughter, the pain of that grief and love, the pain of that grief and moving on and succeeding, and all of those things. It's messy for us because we don't talk about these things. Somebody's just saying on Facebook, I often feel guilty for not crying enough. I'm generally an emotional person, but strangely have not cried a lot since my losses. But that doesn't mean I'm not grieving any less. It doesn't. It absolutely does not. My oldest daughter has found it extremely hard to cry for a time, and we've worked on that and trying to allow her that space to do that. But it just doesn't always look like that. And I want you to take the pressure off yourself and understanding that it doesn't have to look like that. There is no, you will hear the stages of grief, and I forget what they all are, but it's like, sadness, anger, and bargaining is one, which I had to definitely look up when I first became a widow. Bargaining being that kind of negotiation, like, no, they're not going to be dead. There must be, for me, bargaining came in the space of, well, there must be a way to bring them back. I'm a logical person. I believe in science. But I was sat there balling up my husband's socks and tidying up my house and going, there must be a way to bring him back. Somebody must know how to. He was cremated, guys. There's no bringing him back. But the bargaining, blame, that's one. Yeah, thank you. There's so much that comes up. However, those stages of grief, when you read them as somebody grieving, you're like, nah. Like, it doesn't mean anything. It's not tangible, because those moments of grief, and I think Martin described it, and I actually wrote this down, Martin. I think it was you that said it, but somebody did. They come in waves. Grief comes in waves. It comes unexpectedly, out of the blue. It comes at times when you were feeling absolutely fine, and then something will trigger it. It could be that you go to a place where that person, you spent time with that person, and suddenly you're there and you're like, I didn't even think about the fact the last time I was here was with that person. It hits you. For me, I've said before, it comes when I see Ross's handwriting, or when I'm around a person that really knew us as a couple, or it can come when somebody famous dies. It can come when a collective loss happens. It can even come, and I know that many of you experienced this during COVID. Somebody else is just saying a song, a smell, absolutely. All the senses that are so, there is something we have called sense memory, and it's so strong. The songs, the smells, the tastes of the food that we've had around, whatever it is, there are things that will trigger that. Pimm's the drink for me. Ross and I met on a job for Pimm's, and always, we don't really drink that much, but we would drink Pimm's together. And so when I have Pimm's, it's just a little moment. It's not always sad. It's just an acknowledgement of an emotion that comes up within me. And when somebody, certainly when we see somebody in the public eye, like Sarah Harding, I think the thing with somebody like Sarah is that she felt very accessible. She was a normal girl that did good. And we watched her rise from, being in, was it Pop Idol? I forget which one it was. Being in Pop Idol, the rise of her, sorry, there's some shouting upstairs in my house. The rise of her celebrity and all of the stuff that came with that. It's a lot to then watch that person die. We feel part of that journey, and that can trigger in us all of the old grief that perhaps we haven't yet dealt with, or perhaps we have, and yet it's still there. We have to remember that grief and love are sat right next to each other. Grief and love can't exist without each other. There is no grief without a love of that person or that experience. And when you love, you will at some point experience some grief. Pop stars, the rivals. Thank you, Marie. You will experience a grief of some kind at some point. And these things sit right beside each other. And when we live fully, we have to experience this stuff. Yeah, somebody's just said grief is the price we pay for love. It is, and that makes me feel quite emotional, because it's a beautiful human thing. It's a beautiful human thing that we love a person, and then when they're no longer here, we grieve them. And I want you to take away the shame. I want you to take away the blame, the judgment that you have on yourself of how it's supposed to look, because it's not supposed to look like anything. We just have to keep walking forward. And when I say walking forward, depending on where you are in your grief, that might feel scary. That might feel like you feel guilty for moving forwards, that perhaps you didn't love that person enough, you didn't cry. No, we put all this bullshit judgment on ourselves for that. But moving forward, let's reframe that. I love a reframe, right? Where we take a situation, we look at it one way, and then we decide, I'm going to put another frame around that because that's not helping me, that frame. The framework of, if I move forward, I should feel guilty about moving forward. Maybe I didn't love that person enough. Maybe people will judge me. All of those things. Let's take that frame off because that's a bullshit frame. We'll just chuck that in the bin. And then we'll put a new frame on. The new frame is, my person has died and they don't get to live, but I get to honor their life by living mine so full of life, so full of love and experiences that I honor their life. That's what's important, because if, in my version of the world, in my opinion, if we have a death and then we just give up and we don't move forward and we don't live, then it's almost, in my word, it's almost a disrespect to that person, that we've been given this chance of life and yet we're not honoring them by living it, by taking those chances. Your life, whatever you are experiencing in your grief, is there for the taking for you. And your job isn't to fight against the grief and go, I don't want this, I don't want it to be here. I'm sorry to say, but grief is here to stay. Okay, it is. Grief will be when you've experienced, especially those big loss. Thank you, Seema. That's so lovely of you on YouTube. And when you experience a big painful thing like grief, you live with it. And that doesn't always, that sounds really heavy and painful. But let me just put it this way. It doesn't always feel like that. Because what I want you to do is to build all of your life all around that painful moment, that painful grief, that sadness, that loss, all of that. You build your life around it. You live, you experience, you try things, you grab opportunities, you meet new people, you love again, you do all of the things that life entails and you experience it fully. When you do that, the grief feels less painful. That doesn't mean there won't be waves. That doesn't mean that it won't slap you in the face when somebody like Sarah Harding dies, or when you smell that smell or you listen to that song. It will slap you in the face and it will remind you that it's still there. But we can learn to live with that. And actually, we can start to see those moments of a moment to just think about our person and acknowledge what we're feeling, whatever that is. And if we feel the need to cry, then we cry. In fact, just this week, I went onto my husband's Facebook page. Something came up and then I clicked on it. And I hadn't done it for a while and I've seen it before. And I read through some of the comments. Obviously, a lot of the comments went around like anniversaries and dates and his funeral. And I just read them with different eyes. And there was such beautiful comments about my husband and his life. And it made me feel really sad. It made me miss him. And I didn't fight it. I didn't go, I'm not having this experience. I don't want to feel this. I just cried. And I let the tears come. And my daughter, my youngest, was with me. And I said, I really need a cuddle. I miss Dad so much today. And we had a cuddle. And then an hour later, we were dancing at a festival. So, and it didn't mean, me dancing at a festival didn't mean that I didn't love my husband or that I was just over it, because it comes in waves, as we say. Now, if you are experiencing the grief in a way that really feels unmanageable, I want you to consider seeking some help. There is no shame in that. It's 2021, guys. Therapy is the norm. Okay. If you want to go and seek out a therapist or a coach like me, I do work with people on grief, but not exclusively. I have an amazing client of mine, Karen Sutton, who works with widows. So if you are a person who has been widowed, she's incredible. Karen Sutton, the widow coach, you can find her. She just recently put a podcast out. I'm going to be working with her in about 2 seconds, so I can't stay on much longer. But she's incredible as well. And seek out some help, you know. And at the end of this month, I'm going to be opening my membership. And my membership, I have no doubt, will be full of people that have experienced grief. And it is definitely something that I will bring people in to speak about, possibly even Karen, she may want to. But I Thank you, Hannah. Oh, I will pass that on. And I can say, if you're widowed before your 51st birthday, I would highly recommend Way, Widowed and Young. We can talk about our feelings openly in a supportive environment. Absolutely. And finding that community. And that's certainly why, grief is not exclusively my work, but it is not my work either. And it is certainly what has fueled much of what I do. My own pain has fueled that. And in order for me to move forward, I have created this lovely space for you guys, whether that's in my Facebook group or the membership that's coming up, and just any of my online community spaces. There is people there that have been through the same stuff as you, and if you reach out, they will absolutely scoop you up. I have no doubt about that, because the one thing that connects all of us is pain, grief, loss, and all of that stuff. And somebody just said, I can't say what it is, but said, I lost my brother and I find it hard at times. Of course you do. Like, there's no, of course you do. Of course you do. It was your brother. Like, this stuff it's so nuanced because it's so personal, and how we experience grief will be so different. But guys, we don't have to it's not done and dusted, okay? You're allowed 10 years, 20 years down the line to be sad about somebody that you loved and isn't here. Because every big milestone that we experience, we think, I wonder what they would have thought. I wonder what Ross would have thought about the pandemic. I wonder what he would think about my daughters and all of their things that they've been doing. That's a lot. That's a lot for me to consider, and I know that you guys will be experiencing the same kind of things as well. And I can see Nicole saying that's so important to speak times with people who understand and who have experienced loss. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Marie. That's so lovely of you. And I'm going to finish up now, because I have my lovely client, Karen, who is a widow coach, which is quite apt to this conversation. But if you are not in the Happy Me Project Facebook group, do join the Facebook group, because I know there will be many people in there who have experienced this live today and are experiencing grief. And if Sarah Hardin's death has really triggered you and made you feel quite emotional, acknowledge that it is okay that you feel that. It is normal that you feel that. It is normal that you feel these things. They come up at different times, at different stages. Know that whoever you are after that pain that you've experienced, after that grief, that can be wonderful. It doesn't have to be because of this person's death that there is nothing after that, because that's absolutely not true. I'm sending you so much love today, so much support. Reach out to each other, and I will be speaking to you lots on my social media platforms over the next week. No doubt we will be discussing grief at some point. I'll also be talking about my membership, which will go live at the end of this month, and this is life-changing. This membership is going to be life-changing. Like this, for you guys, I want you to have this. I've been working on it for a while. I know I've talked about it for too long, but it's coming, guys, and it's going to be such a support network. It's going to be that next stage. And just for knowledge as well, I've kept it at £20 per month, which is as low as I could get it to. And I wanted it to be that low. I wanted it to be like £5 a week, because most of you, I'm not saying all, but most of you can offer up £5 a week to work on your mindset in a way that's going to be incredibly beneficial. I will speak to you all very soon. Peace.